Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, Joanne. Rowan, I
Hi.
put you as a panelist just so you could see the chat. Sorry, Joanne. I thought maybe you were muted.
No. How are you?
I'm doing just wonderful. How are you doing?
Doing okay, thanks.
That's good. Anything new and
How is it
exciting?
over there?
It's good now, but we're supposed to get an ice storm. I don't like ice.
Oh my. It's like 80 here.
Hey, Joanne.
Mhm.
I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
I know you do. It's hot. I don't like it because it was nice. It was in the 60s, which is nice and cool, and then now it's just like ugh.
Well, 80 I can handle. I don't like it when it gets hotter than that.
Yeah, it's 'cause it jumps so quickly, so you don't really get acclimated, so then it feels even hotter.
But you know what? That's better than up here. Because one day in the spring, typically, one day will be 70, the next day will be 12, the next
Right.
day it'll be snowing, the day after that it'll be 80, you know? You never know what to wear. People will seriously keep coats in their car because they never know when they're going to need it.
Wow.
You know, like jackets.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes it's like that here. A couple weeks ago it was 80. In early part of the day I was in shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops, and that night it went down to 40. So, I mean, a 40-degree jump is just ridiculous in one day.
It is. It is. I'm still not going to feel bad for you because it never gets below 0, so it doesn't count.
Oh, it doesn't. The coldest I've ever seen um was 29. That was the absolute coldest. I heard when I was, I guess, a baby, it did snow here one time, but I,
Ah, cool.
don't remember it.
Well, where I used to live, which is about 3 hours from here, a couple of times when I was young and my kids were young, they had to cancel school because it got so
Mhm.
cold that the fuel in the buses got like sludge, like jello, and they were
Wow.
afraid to ruin the buses.
Yeah.
That's cold. That's like 25 or so below 0.
Crazy.
Hmm.
That's insane.
It is.
Jackie says hi.
Hi, Jackie.
Hello, my love. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. You're talking weather, huh? We're getting it too.
Exactly. Where's here? You're in
Uh,
Australia, right?
here in Jersey.
Oh, Jersey. Why did I think you're in Australia? Sorry.
Uh, that's okay. It sounds like we talk all the time.
No, I don't know why I thought you. I I get people goofed up sometimes.
It's Jackie, remember? No, I'm just kidding, Mary.
Well, you know what some people do? I've already had people do call me up and say, "I'm that lady you met at that health thing, and
Right.
I'm the one that had the toxic bowel. Do you remember me?" No, sorry. I would like to have that good of a memory, but no, no can do.
You must, over your years, have just seen so much people. Do they ever just kind of fuse together in your head?
My grandkids fuse together in my head.
Oh.
So yeah, and the older I get, the worse it is. One time I called, I said, Ken, will you sit down? And my grandson turned to me, he looked at me, he says, man, we don't even have a Ken. We have a Ben and we have a Colin, and it came out Ken. I guess it's time. Okay. I like listening to this. Is anybody here for a child or is going to work with a child that you want to see this?
My son with special needs, I all the information that I get from you, Mary, and other places, I use as a resource to work with them. So he has Down syndrome, and this I may be digressing, but because of this pandemic stress and pandemic fatigue, he needs a lot of support right now.
Okay, well, I'm going to play this then, okay? If not, you're not going to be able to hear the music. It's just really loud, obnoxious music. But the meaning, the message behind it is amazing.
Someone wants to know where they can find that video.
I will show you in a minute here. Okay, let me close it here. I can put it in the chat box. As soon as I find the chat box. That makes me teary-eyed, I'm telling you, because I had a son that had been diagnosed with having ADD-HD. And what they put him through, they labeled him so that they could get extra money. And that title followed him the whole way through school. Whenever my son was diagnosed as having ADHD when he was 6 months old, and then whenever he went to school, the teachers automatically thought he was dumb. And matter of fact, this one teacher in kindergarten, they had this picture that they're supposed to color in. It had the word red, yellow, blue, see if they could recognize the word. And they were supposed to fill in the little blocks and little squigglies that had the color in it. My son just took a crayon, a blue crayon, and he lined through the blue, a yellow crayon, and he put a line through the yellow. And the teacher says, he's not very smart. He doesn't understand. And I said, well, Gennard, why did you, that's my son's name, Gennard. Why did you do that? He said, like a little man, he said, the purpose for this assignment was to see whether or not we knew our colors. If she looks at that, she can tell I know my colors. Why do I have to fill it in? And the teacher said, see, he's not very smart. He has ADD. I said, you know what? I don't think that's the problem. Don't you see, that's kind of intelligent. He understood what you were trying to get across. And it wasn't until I took him to get to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist says, not only is he not dumb, but his IQ is at least 127, possibly higher because he didn't even try very hard. Whenever I tried to get him to keep focusing on the test, he was doing other things. He says, I'm sure it's higher than that. But since he had that title, they assumed my son wouldn't be able to do anything. It was just going to be trouble. So I love that, maybe because it hits home so much, you know? I too don't believe that they should be able to give your children psychiatric titles because it gives other teachers a preconceived notion. Joanne, I'm not sure if you hear something in the background. Are you there?
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you. Alrighty. So, also, I had this one lady call me up and she said, you know, the doctor has my daughter on lithium and all this different kinds of medication she's telling me. One of them was a benzoid, which is like, I don't even think they should even give it to adults. And I said, oh my goodness, what's wrong? She said, well, she's 2. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, 1 minute she's happy and the next minute she's throwing a fit. I said, well, she's a 2-year-old. That's what all 2-year-olds do. She said, no, the doctor said that she is bipolar. I said, yeah, all 2-year-olds are bipolar. I said, did she hurt herself or hurt others? And she said, no, she just throws fits. I said, well, that's being a 2-year-old. You know, how can a doctor, has anybody ever had a 2-year-old here or been around a 2-year-old? Aren't they all a little bit bipolar?
That's why they call it the terrible twos.
Exactly. Thank you. Exactly. So I don't like what they're doing to these young children, putting on all kind of psychotropic drugs. I just think it's a shame. So that's why I play that in the beginning. Alrighty. This is our disclaimer. Basically, it says you don't have to either go natural or go to the doctor. You can combine the two. If your doctor isn't too sure, he can call me. I work with people. I have had many a doctor call me. They don't always believe me and they want to argue with me, but I always am courteous and I'm willing to help. Also, if you're on medication, do not stop it. Certain medications, if you stop it too quickly, you can end up being suicidal or homicidal. Or even if it's not that, with terrible mood swings, especially whenever it comes to psychiatric drugs. Okay? All right, there's a couple new people here. If you've never been in my classes before, I, unlike other people, like a dialogue. So if you have a question, all you have to do is either raise your hand or I think unmute yourself or type it in the chat box and Joanne will read it to me. But you don't have to wait until the end of the class to see if you can figure out what question you want to ask. Ask it at the time. Not only do I like that because it helps me, I can BS with the best of them, but I do better in talking to someone than to lecturing at someone. Unless it's my ex-husband, but that doesn't count. Also, it takes it in a direction a lot of times that is different, that I would never think of. Joanne, have we ever had exactly the same webinar ever?
No, and that's what makes it great. Every time you learn something new.
Right. So if you want to contribute, say, hey, I heard this. Say it. I might say something like, well, I never heard that before. I'm not too sure. I won't cut you down. I won't yell at you. But seriously, ask questions and share. The reason why these classes, I think these classes are pretty decent. And I think the reason why they are is because people have shared things and have asked questions and help us kind of fine tune this. Okay, so don't forget, ask questions. This first page looks like, don't tell me it's going to be a bunch of mumble jumble medical crap, because it's not. But you do need to know this word here, myelin sheathing. We are electrical, and chemical. Whenever the doctor wants to see if your heart's messed up, he'll do an EKG, electrocardiogram. Or they want to see if you have brain damage, they'll do an EEG, electrical encephalogram. So we are electrical that can be picked up with a machine, much like a copper wire is electrical. A copper wire will have a plastic coating, or back in the old days it was cardboard and material, but it has a coating to keep it from shortening out, to help with the conductivity of the electricity, and to protect the actual wire. Our body's much like that. Our electrical wire, as it were, or our nerve, is covered with a fatty coating called the myelin sheathing. The name of this class is stressed out, but what it's really about is understanding the myelin sheathing, what stress does to it, and how to overcome it. More information about that sheathing: 70% of the dry weight is made of fats and cholesterol. It covers the fibers all over the body and on the brain, in the brain. And this is a really important thing to remember. That coating stores and determines the release of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that let us realize life. They help us feel, they help us get happy, they help us get sad, they help us get mad, they help us move. They do a lot of things like that. Our brain and our body are connected together because of the nervous system, because of the chemicals in that nervous system. Okay, a little bit more about the myelin. It protects our nerve from sound. When my son was probably about 5 years old, I would play the music. We'd clean the house, and I'd play the music, and he'd go, "Turn that down, Mom. It hurts." I said, "What do you mean it hurts? It's sound." And he says, "It hurts me." So I would turn it down. Well, the coating on his nerve that should protect and buffer sound was too thin. We often say things and just take for granted what it means, but people say, "Turn that down, it's getting on my nerve." That's exactly what happens to some people. If the coating is so thin, the sound gets to the nerve. I moved next to my daughter. Actually, we live like in a double house. When my grandkids were little, especially my one granddaughter, she loved taking this metal spoon and banging it against a metal pot. If she had done that before I knew about building the myelin sheathing, it would have gotten on my nerves. I don't think I could have taken it. Matter of fact, every once in a while, the batteries would get turned upside down in my kids' toys, like their guns. It would go da 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 like that, because it would go on my nerves. But if they would do that on their side of the house, it wouldn't bother me as much because there's a buffer of space between me and the clanking of the pot. When they were outside playing, it didn't bother me at all because there's even more space and walls and that buffered that sound. But people who have a thin myelin do not have that. So they seem sometimes like grumps. They noise bothers them, and they might like lash out at somebody because it, as my son said, it kind of hurts. Also, sometimes these people don't go out in crowds. They stay home. because when there's a lot of commotion going on around them, they just can't handle that. It bothers them. This myelin also protects the nerve from viruses and bacteria. If it gets really thin, especially under times of stress, you might get something called shingles. Shingles is a virus that's left over from the chickenpox. The virus that causes shingles and the virus that causes chickenpox are the exact same virus. So anyone who has been exposed to that virus has a potential of getting chickenpox. But if their myelin coating or myelin sheathing is very thick, the virus cannot actually get to the nerve. Or sometimes people will get Bell's palsy. Yes? Oh, don't tell me you can't hear
No,
me.
no, I can hear you. Sorry, just a typo.
Oh, okay. Was there a question or anything?
No, I just pressed return too quickly.
Okay, that's fine. All right. So, unlike a copper wire, which is totally straight, continuous, oops, our nervous system is both chemical and electrical. So if my brain thinks, I want to lock that door, it will release chemicals. This nerve will suck up those chemicals, translate it into an electrical impulse until it gets to the end of that nerve. And it releases the exact same chemicals which was left by the brain. This nerve sucks up those chemicals, translates it into electrical impulse, and carries it to exact same electrical impulse to the next gap, which releases the exact same chemicals. This sucks it up, exact same electrical impulse, the exact same chemicals, and so on until you lock the door. People who have MS or something like that, where the myelin is too thin, sometimes they get to the point that they can't feed themselves or they can't move because this process is unable to release these chemicals. The nerve can actually conduct the electricity, but the chemicals cannot be released. So it doesn't get any further. As soon as you lock the door, the sensation of locking that door is picked up, release chemicals. So you have chemical, electrical, until it gets back to the brain, and the brain says, oh, okay, you locked the door. Even if you would lock that door in the dark with earmuffs on, your brain would get the signal through the chemical and electrical impulses that that door has been locked. Any questions about this?
Going back to what you were saying about viruses and shingles, there's a question: would that hold true with COVID?
COVID, to my knowledge, does not attack the nerve. So I don't think the nerve has anything to do with it. But that's a good question. Any other questions?
That's it.
Okay. These are conditions that are caused by thin myelin: ADD, COD. This is attention deficit disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, general anxiety disorder. It can also be Parkinson's if you have a thin myelin and a weak thyroid. Bipolar if you had a weak thyroid and a weak liver. A weak thyroid and a weak myelin. Trichotillomania, body dysmorphia, MS, Tourette's, anorexia, bulimia, panic attacks, social phobias, Bell's palsy and shingles, self-injury or self-cutting. These are the most common things that happen because of thin myelin. I have yet, in all these years, seen someone have one of these conditions with a totally healthy myelin.
Someone's asking, what about Lyme disease?
Lyme disease can attack the nerve, yes, if the myelin is not healthy enough. If the myelin is healthy, then it shouldn't. Another good question. So anything that attacks the nerve, the myelin can make it more vulnerable. But if it's a condition that doesn't attack the nerve, then it doesn't. So like some people, I had a friend that had Lyme disease. They had to put her in isolation because the doctor came in right away to examine her and he dropped his pen. And when he did, it put her into convulsions because she couldn't handle any sound at all. But not all people who get Lyme disease have a thin myelin, so they do not get that particular symptom.
She says, I had Lyme and it affected my face like Bell's palsy on both sides.
Well, then you have a thin myelin. As we go through this, you'll probably say, oh yeah, that's me. That's definitely me. But if your myelin was nice and healthy, that wouldn't happen to your face. Okay, any other questions?
That's it for now.
Okay, so I said that the nerve releases a chemical. Sorry, my dog's having a nightmare or dream or something. Okay, so the chemical that's in between this synapse, all the synapse means is a gap between the nerves. In between an impulse, this should be cleaned out. Most of it goes back into the original ganglia, or should. There's types of medication called reuptake inhibitors. So you can see this nerve releases a chemical. Most of it goes into the adjacent nerve, but some of it goes back into the original nerve. Do you see that right there? That's called reuptake. The pharmaceuticals have produced something called reuptake inhibitors, where the chemical is released, but the original ganglia cannot suck back in that chemical, that neurotransmitter, hoping the next time there'll be more released. Because they know that if you don't have enough that is sucked up into this nerve, that you can have certain symptoms. So they're doing that to make it more available, which actually sounds kind of like a pretty decent idea. But I'm going to show you why I'm not a real fan of these. If you're on a reuptake inhibitor, do not stop them. The herbs that I work with are very friendly with most of the neurotransmitter reuptake inhibitors out there, like Wellbutrin, Luvox, things like that. If it's something brand new, you might have to contact me or contact your pharmacist, but most of them are okay. What I suggest people do is to build up their myelin until they no longer need their medicine, and then have your doctor slowly wean you off. Okay. I'm going to explain to you why I don't like reuptake inhibitors for a long period of time. To do so, I'm going to use a couple of analogies. And if you don't follow me, just say, hey, chick, I don't understand what you're talking about. And I will try to reword it, or Joanne might be able to explain it, help me out here. But I want you to understand this. There are many neurotransmitters, the chemicals in between the nerves. These are the most common: serotonin, dopamine, GABA, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. As I said before, we realize the world around us. We feel emotions because of the neurotransmitters. So, this morning, I woke up and the first thing I had to do was pee. I'm like, oh, it's not even 8 o'clock yet. I want to go back to sleep for a while. I'm semi-retired. I don't want to have to wake up. But my bladder was going, "Eek." So I had to wake up. Wasn't the best thing that happened, you know. When I was trying to get out of bed, my dog decided to get playful and he knocked me back in bed. And I laughed and he jumped on me and I was laughing. So I was in a pretty good mood. So different neurotransmitters were released to let me feel happy. This one made me feel a little bit like, bleh. This was happy. Then his paw caught me on the inside of my thigh and it hurt because my dog's 110 pounds. And it hurt really bad. I wasn't the happiest camper then, right? So my body, that's supposed to be an arrow, my body released different chemicals or these same chemicals in different ratios. And then I came out, I got on a scale and realized I have, as of today, lost almost 93 pounds. So I was actually pretty happy with that. Okay, so every time I feel an emotion, the body releases different amounts of these chemicals, and that's why I feel the way I feel. You can't see these chemicals. We can't, I don't think a doctor can even under a microscope. At least I haven't found anything like that. So I'm going to use an analogy of paint. From these 5 paints, just like these 5 neurotransmitters, there's more different paints than that, but of these 5 paints, you can make every single color and hue known to man. If you want to make gray, you mix black and white together. If you want to make pink, you mix red and white together. If you want to make orange, or purple, or green, or any combination thereof, you do it by mixing these paints. So, if you are a talented artist, like my friend Yvonne Park is, you could paint a painting like this. This is very simple, and she let me use it so I can explain about different colors. So, from those 5 colors, you can make this color blue. Or you can make this color blue. Or this color blue. Or this color blue. And so on. Everybody with me? Just like you can feel happy, love, excited by mixing this chemicals together, the same as mixing the paints together gives you different hues. In between painting, she would clean her brush out. When she had mixed the colors, she would clean the brush out. If she didn't, this would be more green than yellow. So if you don't want the colors to become very dulled, you clean out the brush or use a new brush. Sorry about that. Okay, same with the SSRIs. If it doesn't let some of the chemicals you're released, like whenever I had to pee, and you mix some of that emotion with my dog making me laugh, you're you're not going to get a true emotion. It's going to be dulled. If you want your emotions to be clear and vibrant, the reuptake inhibitors are not going to do that, because the reuptake inhibitors say, nope, don't clean out the brush. Okay, I hope that analogy made sense. Does anybody not understand what I was trying to get at? Because I'm not a professional speaker. I'm just some crazy chick that had OCD once and got into natural health. So I will not be insulted if you say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Anybody? Last chance. Okay, good. Thank you for telling me you got it. So I don't think you guys went, fell asleep. All right, so the doctors would give you medicine to block the neurotransmitters from going back into the original ganglia. What I say is, what if we made it so thick and healthy that it can release and reuptake exactly the way it should? The medical profession knows that the release or the potential of releasing and reuptaking the neurotransmitter is directly because of the myelin. Then why not rebuild the health of the myelin? Does that make sense? Okay, now I wish I could say, man, I was just so brilliant, I figured this beast out myself, and it's not how it happened. I kind of like worked backwards. I had a lot of health problems, and I got
Uh-oh. Is everybody else not hearing her? And she's gone. Yeah, I don't know. Technical difficulties. Sorry, everyone.
Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Okay. What part did you miss?
Uh, you were just talking about you just got started talking about the myelin, your myelin.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So I took a class on iridology, which is the study of the iris of the eye. And the teacher taught us that this landmark right here, see, it looks like a little edging around the pupil. He told us that was called the autonomic nerve wreath. Now they call it the collarette. This is a picture of my eye. You can't see one of these defined lines. So the lady, after we were taught the class, we looked in each other's eyes, and she says, you don't have one. So I went up and I asked him, I said, is that okay? I don't have one. What does that mean? He said, well, that is indicative of the coating on your nerve called the myelin. And I said, well, what do I do about it? He said, well, you can walk, so don't worry about it. Well, I wanted to be as healthy as possible. So I went home and I did a lot of research, and I found out the myelin was made of cholesterol and fats, and it covered the nerves, and I learned all that stuff. And I started taking the herbs I want to be talking about later on. When I did, my OCD, my anxiety disorder, and my agoraphobia started going away. And I thought it's just because I got out of a really stressful marriage and I just was not as uptight anymore. I didn't know. But that's not what it was at all. It's because I was taking the herbs for my myelin. So when people would come to me, instead of working with diseases, we try to balance out the body. So I would tell them, okay, you're lacking this, take fast and stuff, and stuff for the nerve. And people would come back to me and say, you're not going to believe this. I've had OCD for 15 years of my life and it's gone. I mean, completely gone. Enough people came to me, and I used to keep records. I don't keep records anymore. But I used to keep records, and I thought, well, this person had a thin myelin, and this person had a thin myelin. And that's how I put two to two together. Then I started to do research, and I found out that neurotransmitter reuptake inhibitors were being used for ADD. I disagree with the HD. Depression, OCD, panic attacks, and mild schizophrenia. I also noticed and found some information that fatty acids help with ADD, depression, OCD, panic attacks, and mild schizophrenia. Say something brilliant, Joanne, okay?
Sure. Um, for those of you who are new, you've probably, well, those who have been here before have already heard my speech, but this is a class that really inspired me to get into natural health because when I found Dr. Murray and found this class, I had, you name it, I had it. So I had horrible panic attacks daily, multiple times a day. I had OCD, I had depression, I had anxiety. I was just kind of going down this list. And taking her suggestions just really changed my life. It was amazing.
Okay, thank you, Joanne.
You're welcome.
Since then, a friend of mine named Francesca did a lot of research. She's also a naturopath. And she did a lot of research, and she found studies that shows that OCD is associated with abnormal myelination, or sometimes it's called, where is it, white matter? Or gray, no, not gray matter. White matter, where's white matter? Oh, right here, white matter. So white matter, when they talk about white matter in the brain, they're talking about the myelin. So they found out that the reason why people were getting OCD is because of white matter. So now, although I thought it before, now there are clinical trials that prove that the myelin can be thin, and that's what causes OCD. If you want these, I noticed Joanne putting a few in there. You can look them up. If you don't have time to click on them and save them, email me and I can send you these. Then there's some more. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Question. Someone wants to know, is it possible to regrow the myelin?
I believe as long as there's some myelin in there, it is. You know, if you take a plant and you don't water, it's all wilted and it looks like, oh my goodness, it's going to die. But if you water, it'll come back. But if that same plant goes beyond that point until the root has died, then no, you can't. If you water the plant, it won't come back. Same with the myelin. I believe that there's some myelin still left on the nerve, it can be regrown back. I believe that's all I am. I worked with a couple people that had, one guy had Parkinson's disease, another lady had MS really, really bad. Neither one of them were able to walk or feed themselves. We tried everything to build their myelin, and I think the root part was just too gone, and they didn't see any improvement at all. If you can walk and feed yourself, chances are you can do a lot to nourish your myelin. Okay. Any other questions?
And can you see the changes in your eye?
For one thing, it takes sometimes years for the myelin to get healthy. And although IPA says that your eyes never change, and so does the medical profession, yeah, I believe a little bit, but you can see, because I've seen it. But you have to be very diligent, stay away from the bad stuff, try to cut stress out of your life, do the things we're going to talk about. But I do believe it's possible, as long as it's not too far gone. Very, very good
And
questions.
sorry, is it common for people with OCD or thin myelin to smoke and or drink alcohol or coffee excessively?
Well, they self-medicate, which would be the cigarettes and the alcohol. Also drugs. Matter of fact, I would say probably the people who are really bad, they can't even leave their home anymore, probably about a third of them smoke pot because they just need to relax and they can't. Things get to their nerves very easily. I do think that coffee can tear down the myelin. We're going to get into that in a minute. Great questions. Okay, anybody else?
And what's your thoughts on lithium as associated with greater white matter?
Lithium is a mineral that you have to eat stuff with lithium in it. And lithium is released in the brain because the thyroid tells the body to release the lithium. So, I don't know what you mean by how it's associated with white matter. I don't know if it destroys white matter or it keeps it alive. I don't know. But lithium is something that helps alter your moods, and it is released because of the myelin and because of the thyroid. I hope I answered you that and all that mess. But what it does to the white matter or the association with white matter, I'm just really not sure. Any other questions?
That's it for now.
Okay. These are other studies that show abnormalities of white matter with OCD. I just added these on to it. Okay, so if you're on medication, don't just stop the medication, as I said earlier. I would suggest that you build the myelin until you feel, I don't know if I need this stuff anymore. Then I would go to your doctor, make sure he gives them in pill form rather than capsule form, and I would do something we call the Tara method. Tara is a friend of mine whose husband was in the second tower on 9/11. The first tower in New York was hit, and everybody was panicking. He said, "I'm out of here." And they said, "No, we're supposed to stay here." And he said, "I'm leaving. I'm not staying here." And he started down the stairwell. And then a little bit later, as you know, the second plane hit. And where the plane went in was where he would have been. If he had stayed there, he had been killed like everyone else in his office or in his department. He had terrible survivor's guilt and PSTD or PTS, whatever it is, post-traumatic stress syndrome. That one. I'm horrible with acronyms. So he had that. And the doctors put him on all kind of medications. Whenever he built up his myelin, he said, "I don't think I need this anymore. I feel great." Because usually those medications do not make you symptom free. They take the edge off. They don't typically. There's only one lady that I know that said, "I disagree. It made me exactly the way I was before." But that's out of thousands, literally tens of thousands of people I've worked with over the last 30 years. That's pretty rare. So after Tara's husband became symptom free. The doctor said, well, okay, we'll cut the pill in half. And they cut that pill in half. And then, 2-3 weeks, you should be able to be off of it. And every time he tried to get off of it, about 2 months later, because it stays in your body for a while, after 2 or 3 months later, he started getting terrible depression and anxiety. So Tara came up with this brilliant idea, one that I think should have gave her the Nobel Peace Prize for. She took the tablet and she took a metal emery board. She took the pill and she glided it across the emery board one time and gave it to her husband for a couple days. Then, she did that every day for a couple days. Then she took the pill when she took the pill and she would go across it twice. And a little bit would come off. And then 3 times and 4 times. And kept on doing it until she was down to about a half a pill. Kept them there for a while. Then she took that half a pill and she did it. She had cut the pill in half and she did it. Until it was so small that she couldn't even go across anymore. And then she quit it for him. 3 months later, he was fine. I believe the doctors told him to go off the medication too quickly. It takes a long time to get off that medication. And these are reuptake inhibitors. Benzoids can take up to 5 years. If you're on a benzoid, whatever you do, do not stop it. But if you're not on a benzoid and a doctor says, you know what, let's try these benzoids, I would do a lot of research, think long and hard before I did it. But it takes a long time to get off of this. The whole time he kept on with the herbs. Then after 3 months, and he was still fine, he weaned himself off the herbs. And for a long time, until some personal things happened that caused more stress, he was fine. For a couple years, he was fine. So if you go to the doctor and he says, and I've had people tell me this, I've been on this medicine for 15 years, and the doctor told me, just don't get it, don't take it anymore. It's time to educate your doctor. And if you want to have him call me so I can explain this to him, but even if your doctor says just stop your medication if you've been on it for a while, if you've been on it for a day or two, I'm not worried about that. But if you've been on it for a while, I would go and find another doctor, because that's stupid and dangerous, in my opinion. All right, any questions about the Tara method?
Not specifically on that, but how long does it take to build the myelin? Or how long did it take to build his myelin? Sorry, the guy you were talking about.
I don't remember. The average people, because I did keep a little, but the average is between 18 months and 3 years. But I don't remember how much it was for him. I'll have to ask Tara that. Okay, any other questions?
There's a comment. NCBI article states that lithium exerts several beneficial effects on axonal regeneration and also has remyelinating effects. That's from 2012.
Very cool. Could you send me that link or the name of the article and where it was found? I'm always interested in learning new stuff. So I would appreciate it immensely. I had no idea. It may help others too. But I do know that the myelin is too thin and the thyroid is sluggish, that you cannot release enough lithium. Okay, any other questions or
Nope,
comments?
that's it. That's it for now.
All right. I'm going to use a little bit of analogies again so you can fully understand the myelin. I'm an old lady. I'm retired. Oh, semi-retired. When I was young, we used to have CB radios were the big thing. It's something you had in your car, and you would turn it on, and you hear and you're like 5 or 6 different conversations. And there was something called a squelch button. And that squelch button, you would turn it very slowly to hone out all the static and whatever conversations you didn't want, so you could talk to the person that you did want. This analogy reminds me of ADD. The myelin, because it buffers you from sound and commotion, helps you hone out or hone in on what you want to listen to and drown out what you don't. So if you're in school and someone's gone on their desk, drumming their fingers, or if there's a bird outside chirping, or somebody's walking past the door, it will take your attention when you have a hard time paying attention to the teacher because your squelch button's not working. Just like it was really hard to follow a conversation on the CB radio without the squelch button. I still have a little bit of ADD. I have not taken anything for my nervous system now for 29 years. I still have ADD, and a couple times I thought, I should get back on that to kind of get rid of the ADD. But I want to be able to tell people I'm still symptom free of OCD, even though I don't take my herbs anymore. But I work with people that got completely past their ADD too. I just didn't take it long enough to do that. Well, at the time, I didn't even know it was possible to do that. So 29 years, I have had no signs of agoraphobia, ADD, or general anxiety disorder. Even whenever I was hit by a huge plow truck. Even whenever the doctors killed my mother by poking a hole through her arteries during the catheterization. Even under trauma of a bad marriage, my OCD has never come back. Not all people are that lucky. Sometimes during trauma, it comes back. But I'll tell you how and what to do to help prevent that from happening. So everybody understand this analogy? Just a little bit of a question here. How many people here, for whoever you're here for, if you're here for a friend or yourself or a child or something like that, how many people here have OCD and a little bit of ADD? How many people here only have OCD or only have ADD? If you have just ADD, put an A in the chat box. If you have only OCD, put an O. If you have both, put a B.
We have an A. I know I had both.
I did too.
Another A.
Okay.
Someone else says both, they think.
All right. So most people just have ADD. Well, that's cool because ADD doesn't seem to be as bad as the OCD with it. Okay, well, good. Now I know which direction to take us in. All right. So any questions about this? All right. To understand the next part, we need to talk about the 3 levels of consciousness. Okay?
Someone's asking, how do you describe OCD?
OCD is a thought or an action that keeps coming back in your mind. Some people have to count and do something 3 times. My son, and I never knew this at the time, that this was a symptom of, well, that's ADD. Okay, forget it. I was thinking ADD. OCD would be something just you can't get something out of your mind. That's the obsession part. Um, the compulsion is you have to do something. I used to have to touch the door before I could touch the doorknob. I think it's because one time I got shocked when I touched the doorknob, so I had to touch the door and then I would open the doorknob. I'm not sure if that's why, but now that I'm thinking of it. So it's some people will like oh, help me, Joanne. I can't think of examples right now.
The most common thing is hand washing. You never feel like you've done it enough, or you have to check something over and over. Like I know people who, if they lock the door to their house, but they have to keep turning it to make sure it's closed. For me, one of the things was counting. If I had to count something over and over and over again.
Yeah, my son had the counting, so I thought that was ADD. But then come think of it, it is OCD. Another one I had is, and it's so different. The varieties are out there like crazy. I had scrupulosity as part of my OCD. I had more than one kind of OCD, lucky me. But I would say prayers at night, and I think, oh, I thought I'm not, a blasphemous or something that I shouldn't have. I got to start over again. And a lot of times I would fall asleep laying across my bed because I had to keep saying my prayers over because I thought I wasn't being respectful enough or I was thinking of something I shouldn't have thought. There was this one lady that called me up and she said, I know this is stupid, but when I had my baby, I was afraid of giving my daughter a bath because I was afraid she would, if I let the water out or she would hit the plug, she would go down the drain. I said, well, your baby's too big to go down the drain. She said, no, I'm talking about my 7-year-old. She said, intellectually, I know there's no way she could fit down that drain. But I can't give her a bath because I'm afraid I'll lose her down the drain. So there can be a lot of different things. It's not like, oh, I have such fun memories of this. It's something that you don't want to have. If you have something you're experiencing and you're glad you have it, it's not OCD.
She's asking, so is it mostly referred to fear?
It can be, but it doesn't have to be. I would put, whenever my kids, I also had the organizational one. Whenever I put my kids' Monopoly game away, all the dollar bills, heads have to go in the same direction. They had to be flipped in the same, like with the face up, and the heads had to go in the same direction. I wasn't afraid if I didn't do it. It bothered me if I didn't. But there wasn't any actual fear to it. Every day, I went through my whole apartment. I had a huge apartment. And I would have to take everything out of the drawer, make sure there wasn't anything it wasn't supposed to be, and put it all back in a drawer. Again, there was no fear associated with that. But I had to do it. And if I didn't do it, I just felt I have to do it. But I wouldn't say there was really fear. But many times there is fear, like of germs. Some people who don't walk on cracks, walk in a crack, you break your mother's back type thing, is because of fear. Or having to lock the door over and over again is because of fear. But not always OCD is fear. Sometimes it's just stupid.
I know for me, sometimes it was just not being able to get a thought out of my head. It would just go over and over, and it wasn't something I was afraid of necessarily, just something that triggered something in my head, and the thought went around and around and around and around, and just like well, if you're old enough, like when a record just got stuck, it's just
Yeah.
over and over and over.
Yeah, exactly. And that happens a lot with people tell me with songs. I just cannot get this song out of my head. It's been like a week. Now, every time you hear a song, you go, oh, yeah. You think about it a little bit. But this is like, I wish this song would just get out of my head. I hope that answered your question. It's probably longer than you wanted it to be. Is that okay? Alrighty. So there's 3 levels of consciousness. There's the conscious part of your brain. That's like the RAM on your computer. What is it called? Something access memory. Random
Yes.
access memory. So I am 1,000 years old. So whenever I started a computer, you had to get a tape recorder, put a tape in, hit play, and record to save whatever work you did on a computer. That's how old I am. Now, if you wanted to use that, you had to take that, put it in a tape recorder, and upload it onto your computer every single time. Real pain in the butt. Can't believe we did all that. Now, you don't. I open up my computer in the morning, and bloop, 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 all these icons come up. Microsoft Word comes up. I just click on it. I don't have to reinstall it all the time. It's in my RAM, that memory. That's a small part of my computer. I think I have 10 gigs or 20 gigs, something like that, of RAM. Then there's a preconscious part of your brain. That's bigger. This would be like your C drive. My C drive, I think, is 5 terahertz. That's a lot bigger than my RAM. A lot bigger than my RAM. So, I open up my Microsoft Word, I type a letter, and I save it into my C drive. Later on, if I want to get that letter again, I have to dig around on my computer and find out of my C drive that letter to bring it back in to the Microsoft Word. Okay, everybody with me so far? So there's a connection between the RAM and the C drive. Communication. So please put a Y if you're with me. Put an N if you're not.
Lots of lies.
Okay, good. Alrighty. The next part of your brain, because this is all part of your brain, is the internet, which seems almost endless. It's the hugest part of your brain. The only thing is, there's no Wi-Fi. So your RAM cannot tell the internet without Wi-Fi what to do. So I can't say, oh, my blood pressure is a little bit too high. Okay, crank down the blood pressure. I can't consciously tell my unconscious or subconscious part of my brain to turn down my blood pressure or my heart rate or my immune system. Okay, there's a virus that came into me, attack it. I can't do that. Same with the brain. I mean, same with certain emotions. So if you are, well, this will be better. Let me do this. Remember I said that your brain will send chemical electrical impulses until you lock the door. And then the sensation of locking that door through chemical electrical impulses tells the brain, okay, it's been accomplished. If the myelin is very thin, and there's different kinds of OCD, and I don't understand all of them, but I had this one. I did a lot of thinking, a lot of praying on this. If the brain tells the body to lock the door, and you lock the door, the sensation, because the myelin is thin and it cannot release, and reuptake the chemicals the way it should, the brain doesn't get mission accomplished signal. You can see it, you can do it, but the brain, the subconscious part of the brain, because this faded out that there's no Wi-Fi, does not get the message. So you might do it again and again and again and again and again until it feels right. Until the brain says, oh, cool, she locked the door. I had this one time. Once I was down in Altoona, which was a town about 23 miles from where I lived. And I locked my keys in the door. And it was cold and it was miserable weather and I was stuck. So I called home and I said, Dad, can you bring down the extra set of keys? And I had to wait for about a half hour because the roads in Pennsylvania are like terrible. It's not a straight shot. It's up and down and curves. You go slow. And then it was snowy too. So I was there probably about a half hour longer, waiting for my dad to bring me down the keys. Because of that, I was afraid that I was going to lock my keys in the car again. And I had a terrible time. I stopped going places for a while because I had a terrible time because I was afraid about that, about locking the keys. So I thought, okay, I'm not a total stupid idiot. I can get over this. So I thought I will look at my hand turning off the car. I would say it, and I would hear it because I said it. So I'm sitting in the parking lot all by my lonesome, and I go, I am now taking my hand on my keys. I am turning the key off. I am pulling the key out. I am putting the key in my pocket. I'd tap it 3 times. I don't know why 3, but I tapped it 3 times. And when I went out, I still could not lock that door. Crazy. Now I think how stupid that was. But I couldn't because the fear of locking the keys in the car was too strong. There'd be times when I would still keep the keys in my hand because that was my next thought. I'll just keep in my hand. I'll lock the door and close the door with my other hand. And I'd have it in my hand. And I'd be looking at the keys and I'd go to close the door and I could not close that stupid door. That's irrational. But my brain didn't realize that I had those in my hand. It never registered to my subconscious. Does that make sense to anybody? Please put a J if it makes sense to you. So we know you're still with us here. I'm going to run out of the alphabet pretty soon.
We're getting J's.
Okay, good. Any questions?
No questions right now.
Okay. Our subconscious is ruled by the brain, but it also commissions the adrenals and different glands to do things. The adrenal glands are on top of your kidneys. Renals mean kidneys. Adrenal means added on to the kidneys. So they're like little hats on top of your kidneys. These things cause the body to produce adrenaline. During times of stress, the adrenaline helps you fight, run away, flight or flee, or freeze. So if somebody comes out in an alley and goes booga booga and it scares you, you'll probably scream or hit them or run away. It's the adrenaline that does that. It takes all the energy and all the circulation to your muscles so you can run away or fight. Freeze happens sometimes too. There are goats that if they get scared, they just go pass out and plop over. So fight, flight, or freeze are three mechanisms that the body uses to protect you. A deer in a headlight will freeze because they've been scared. They don't move. If people don't fight or run, then they'll start to freeze. And I have people tell me, I just can't do anything anymore. I can't get out of bed. I can't accomplish anything. It's like I'm frozen, unable to do what I want to do. That's their adrenal glands. That's a mechanism of survival that the body has done. If your myelin is thin, noise and commotion or things get to the nerve more easily. So people who have a thin myelin, if they hear like outside a car go, backfiring, they go, oh my goodness, what happened? And their heart will start pounding. All that adrenaline will go in and other people go, did you hear something? Because of the difference in the myelin. So, if you're walking down the woods and you hear rustle, rustle, rustle of the leaves, your first thought is, I wonder if that's a bear. And your adrenaline starts. The thinner your myelin, the more sure you are that it's a bear, because that noise sounded a lot bigger than it would to someone who had a healthy myelin. Then, when you look over, you see it's just a little bunny. Nothing to be afraid of. Your body should release things that says, okay, chill out, adrenal glands. It's just a bunny. And you should just finish your walk, enjoy your walk. If, however, you are under constant stress or something that's going to stimulate the adrenals might have a hard time turning that off. So there are some people that can get through a panic attack very easily. I got a call a couple of days ago from this woman. She says, I'm in mid-traffic. Help me. I am having a major panic attack. Somebody just moved forward like they were going to pull out in front of her, but they didn't. They just went a little bit forward and they saw her and they stopped. And she said, I can't move. I'm sitting here, and I could hear their beeping the horns and stuff like that. She says, what do I do? I can't. I said, well, punch. So she started punching her dashboard. Can I think of the name of the word dashboard? She started punching her dashboard, and I said, scream and yell. And she said, they're going to take me away in a little rubber room. I said, I'll vouch for you. I told you to do it. And she's punching, and then she went, oh, okay, I can go now. I'll call you when I get home. Because she used up all that adrenaline. So under times of stress or anxiety, I suggest that you punch. Scream, yell, punch to use up the adrenaline. Once the adrenaline is gone, your heart's not racing. Your blood pressure comes down. You don't feel anxious anymore. The anxiety goes away. We are under, a lot of times, constant stress. Especially, I don't know about you, Joanne, but I've had more people call me about this stuff with COVID, since COVID came out, than I did 10 years before altogether. How about you?
Oh yes, definitely. Even people that I worked with who were doing better, it kind of just they took a huge setback with all the stress of COVID.
Right, because you hear it in the news and you see it on Facebook, and there's always these announcements and on the radio, and you're constantly reminded of it, and it keeps you under stress. You can't punch people because of it. You know, you can't get up and run away from it. There's nothing really to run away from or run to. So we're under a lot of this stress. So what I suggest people do is to go to their bedrooms, punch the snot out of their mattress, scream and punch their mattress until all that adrenaline is used up. When you do that, you use up the adrenaline and you fake your adrenals out. The adrenals, since there's no Wi-Fi, says, wow, she stopped. She was going crazy there for a while and she stopped. That bear must be dead. No sense making more adrenaline. Not needed. Y'all with me so far? If you feel frozen and stuck in your life, do the same thing, because the body will cause people to freeze, like a possum or a deer or a goat, a little pygmy goat, because they're not capable of fighting off a bear. Did you know, my uncle used to tell me this, never did it, thank goodness, but he said, if you see a bear on the farm, just lay down and pretend like you're dead, and they'll let you alone. They won't eat you. They won't bite into you. They'll leave you alone. Because there's a lot of big animals like that that don't eat something that they haven't killed themselves. I don't know if that's why the freeze happens for people, but I do know this. If you're not capable of protecting yourself, the body will say, okay, just freeze. But if you start punching, the adrenals say, you know what, she's kind of like she's tough. She might be able to handle herself. And you'll get unfrozen. Any questions about any of that?
No, you answered it. So if you're in a rut, that would, or if you feel like you're in a rut, that would be adrenals?
Yes. Yes, it would be the adrenals. The body's trying to protect you, doesn't want you to get out of that rut because there could be dangers in that rut, out of that rut. It doesn't want you to move forward or go out and get a job or go out and do whatever because there could be danger out there. Okay. Any other questions? Good question.
That's it.
Okay. Oops. There's some things, we're going to go these really fast. They found, there's a study, can you imagine? Stress balls not as effective as punching somebody in the face. They actually did a study about that. Not sure who actually would let someone punch them in the face, see if it helps their stress. Also, although it's being made fun of, there are some places where they have public punching bags. And the one that I had read about, they put it in a subway because there was a lot of violence in the subways. And they found out that if they put this punching bag where people could just punch it like crazy, that the crime of violence went down. Now, not so much like purse snapping and snatching and stuff like that. Boy, I can't speak tonight. Not things like that, but violence, like pushing and shoving and fighting somebody. And here's some studies that show indeed that happens. Okay. Besides stress, another thing that's really hard on the adrenals is coffee, tea, and caffeine. This is usually where people start getting out because they love their coffee and their tea and their caffeine. But these pump up the adrenaline. And it's not just the caffeine in the coffee and the tea. It's the tannic acid. So even decaf, I would avoid. It beefs up the adrenals, and it also pulls out B vitamins and fatty acids out of the body. There's studies that show that caffeine pulls circulation and fats from the from the brain. This shows that it depresses the myelin protein around the nerve. Excuse me, the nerve. We've known this for what? Well, you. I don't know how long you've been with me, Joanne. What year did we meet?
I think it was probably the end of 2012.
Okay, so 9 years.
Mm.
So for 9 years, we knew people that coffee, tea, and caffeine affected them. These studies are like only within the last year or two. So they're starting to catch up. Matter of fact, probably about 20 years ago, there was a study, and just so happened to have been sponsored by and paid for by Starbucks, that said that coffee is good for you because it has antioxidants in it. Well, if they found out that cocaine had antioxidants in it, that doesn't mean that it's good for you. The damage done by coffee, tea, and caffeine outweighs whatever benefits might be mixed in with it. One time there was this lady that was with me for 2.5 years working on her myelin. And I said, I don't understand why you're not symptom free yet. So let's start from scratch. I'm going to ask you all these questions, And I asked her a bunch of questions and I said, do you drink coffee? She said, no. Well, not really. I said, okay, well, let's explore this because I don't know what else it could be. She said, I make my husband's coffee and I put it on the counter and I pour some milk in it and then I carry it to the kitchen table where he reads his coffee and he can reads his newspaper and drinks his coffee. Sometimes I get a little bit too much milk in it and I'll take a sip. She said, not even a whole mouthful, just a little sip. That only happens once in a while. I said, I really don't know what else it could be. Why don't you stop doing that? Go buy a little milk pitcher and carry it over with the coffee and let your husband put his own milk in there. And she did. For 2.5 years, she got pretty good. Enough that she said, I can live like this the rest of my life. And I said, that's not what you want. You want to get completely symptom free. The last 6 months, when she cut out that little sip of coffee once in a while, her nervous system healed the rest of the way. So if you're here for yourself or someone you love, I suggest no coffee, no tea, and no caffeine at all. None. Forever. For as long as you don't want to have your OCD. I've had people later on, one lady 10 years afterwards, she decided to get a job and she would drink a little coffee with her workmates, and it came back after being symptom free for 10 years. Well, you all stayed. I'm pretty proud of you. Other things that stress out the adrenals is heavy metal music and that bam, 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 that kind of stuff. Video games that are like smash them up, kill them, kick them in the groin. Same with the movies or daredevil activities. Anything that gets the adrenaline going is bad for the adrenals and bad for the myelin. I have sugar here and a question mark. I've had 2 people that were born in India that did this, and they found out that they couldn't have sugar either. But that's only 2 out of over 10,000. So it's not very often. But if you don't know anything else, and you can contact me or Joanne, and we would more than be willing to answer your questions. But if this half of the United States fell off into the ocean, you can get a hold of us. If everything else seems to be you're doing what you should be doing, make sure you cut out the sugar. Okay. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Is anybody here pregnant or plan on getting pregnant that we have to talk about ultrasounds? Or is anybody here that wants to be a practitioner and wants to learn about ultrasounds?
They're saying no.
Okay, good. All right, so unutilized adrenaline.
Oh, go back. Someone said yes, they would like to hear about that, about
Okay.
it for that reason.
Okay, yeah. Ultrasounds, and here's the studies for the ultrasounds right here. Here and here. And I think there's a bunch of them here too. But ultrasounds, I mean, you could take an ultrasound and you can bust up a kidney stone. And kidney stones are pretty hard. You can break up a kidney stone with an ultrasound. This is a machine called an ultrashape, where you run it up and down fat lady's legs and stomach to break up the fat so the body reabsorbs it. If you are pregnant and they do an ultrasound, it has the potential of busting up the fats in the baby's brain and nervous system. There is a midwife that was a sweet, sweet lady, one of my mentors. She didn't think so, but I thought of her as a mentor. That was a midwife, and she was Mennonite. So the women that she helped most of the time were Mennonites, and they had their babies at home and didn't go see a doctor. They just see the midwife. But because times got hard, she started working with a doctor. And she'd follow the people, the children that she helped deliver. And she noticed that the ones with the doctor would end up with attention deficit disorder. And she didn't understand it. So she kind of weeded things out. She talked the doctor into using her vitamins instead of the prenatals that he used, and nothing was working. Then she thought one day, well, they're doing that ultrasound on these babies, but I don't do an ultrasound on my women that deliver at home. And she was writing a book, and she believed, and I believe she's correct, that the ultrasound would break up and thin out the myelin. Also, they do it with animals. In 1984, they had a summit with radiology and sonograms, and they had the expert there, and they said, the AMA said, we want to do this to pregnant women to see if the baby's alive or morbidly deformed or something like that. And the people said, oh no, because we know that if we do it enough, that the babies, do it enough to dogs, that the dogs are born without myelin on their nervous system. We can demyelinate puppies to use for experiments on regrowing myelin by giving the mother dog a bunch of ultrasounds. And the doctor says, but what if the baby is dead or so morbidly deformed that the mother would want to do an abortion? And they said, okay, for those two reasons, we will say, go ahead and do an ultrasound. And they did it for a while just under that pretense. And then after a while, they said, well, you know what? These kids aren't born with 2 years, 3 years, or any kind of a problem. We assume that it is safe. But there is not one single study ever that showed that ultrasound is safe on an unborn child. And now, these studies show that it can affect the tissue of the fetus and the brain of the fetus. Now, this one says could be linked to autism. I don't think so. But these are studies that are shown that it's not a good idea to do. We're going to skip that. Not a good idea to use ultrasounds if you're pregnant. Doctors will give you a hard time, but if they accept you as a patient and then you tell them you don't want an ultrasound, My understanding is they have to keep you as a patient. And since you're boss, they give you a hard time. My daughter has 5 children. And the first time when she said, I don't want an ultrasound, and I went with her, and the midwife says, oh, but your baby's organs would be born on the outside, and the baby would die, and we could save the baby if we only knew. We only did the ultrasound. And made me kind of mad. And I stepped between my daughter and this midwife, nurse, whatever she was. And I said, how often, or how long have you been a midwife? And she said, 27 years. I said, how often have you personally seen this happen? She said, well, never personally. I said, what are the chances of that happening? She doesn't want an ultrasound. She said, but it does happen. I said, yeah, it could happen, but the chances are so remote. We're not going to jeopardize this baby just because of that. So the doctor will use a fetal stethoscope and will let you deliver without an ultrasound if you sign a waiver saying you're not responsible if the baby's organs are born on the outside or some kind of craziness that you didn't pick up. If my daughter had bled and kept on bleeding, and she did bleed a little bit with Ava, but we gave her some Pro-GM and she stopped. But if she had bled, that it was pretty heavy, I would have said, okay, now it's time for an ultrasound. But just routinely, there's no reason for it. I had someone call me up and say, the doctor thinks that this baby has Down syndrome and they want to do an ultrasound. That's a good reason, right? And I said, well, are you going to abort the baby if it has Down syndrome? She said, of course not. I'm a Catholic. I would never do that. I said, then why do they have to know before the baby's born? When a baby's born, in the nose and the eyes, you can tell a baby that has Down syndrome. You don't have to do an ultrasound first. If it's something that they could change in vitro, then absolutely. That would be a whole different thing. But if it doesn't, then why do it? Well, the doctor said he wants to know. Why? He can tell when a baby's born. Don't jeopardize your child for the curiosity of your doctor. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. All right. Anything else? Any questions before we go on? Because now we're going to talk about healing the myelin, which doesn't take as long as understanding the myelin. Since 70% of the dry weight of the myelin is made of fats and cholesterol, you need to make sure your liver is working well. We're going to talk about that in a second. And you need to make sure that you eat enough fatty acids. I would suggest a thumb's worth of good fats with every meal. Butter, olive oil, something like that. Avocado, nuts, seeds, something like that. Then if I had OCD, now that's just for everybody. I would do that for everybody. That's how much fast I would do. If I had OCD or something, a thin myelin condition, I would also take about 15 grams of of fatty acids supplement source. Half of them fish and half of them plant. So like 8 and 7 or whatever. You want the fish source because a sluggish liver has a hard time converting the EPA into DHA the omega-3 into EPA and DHA. The fish's body does that for you. But you still want your body to remember and be able to do that. You don't want to become lazy. So you want some plant source as well. The only fish oil that I suggest is Nature's Sunshine's Super Omega-3 oil or krill oil, because they have exclusive rights to a place where the fish are the most pure, and they have a distilling process that doesn't allow the oil to bind, the bond to bind differently, and doesn't let the oils turn rancid, but it cleans it, it distills it, for lack of a better word. And they have the sole patent to that procedure. The plant source, they have something called Hemp Zero, which is a hemp oil. I don't suggest you get that because it's expensive. And there's something called Nutiva, Nutiva.
Oh, we lost you again. Oh, is she not here? Uh, yeah, Nativa is oh, did she come back? There
Okay.
you are.
How long have I been gone?
um, from you were spelling Nativa, that's the last thing we heard.
Okay. So you didn't hear that I couldn't spell protein properly. That's good. You'll never
No.
know now. Okay. But the plant source as well as the fish source, you need to take it with a protein. And I would use Nutiva instead of Nature Sunshines because it's very good and it's cheaper. Unless you want to get your stuff all in one place, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with Nature Sunshines. Theirs is very high quality. It's just that this is high quality too. Okay, any questions so far with that? I would do a nervine herb. I'm doing like Joanne. Joanne taught me this. I just do Chinese stress relief now. Nerve control is a little bit cheaper, but if you have the MTHFR gene, it can cause anxiety. If you're going through puberty, it can cause anxiety. I'm just going to start suggesting nothing but the Chinese stress relief. Then you need to soothe and address the adrenals. Do not take adrenal support. You support it nutritionally, like parsley, something like that. And then follow the diet. We'll talk about the diet in a second. So my favorite oils are hemp oil and Nature Sunshine's Super Omega 3 oil. Oh, EIN. And that's how you spell protein right there. Still no questions? Okay. You need to make sure that your liver is strong enough to digest the fats. The liver is what produces the bile salts, puts it in a gallbladder, and then the gallbladder concentrates it. But the liver produces it. We need to make sure your liver is working well. So if you have any of these symptoms, I would also nutritionally support your liver, or you'll end up with these big globs of fatty acids, and your body can't break it down small enough to use it. Symptoms of a weak liver are bloating or passing gas more than once a week. It's average to do more than that, but it's not natural. Sleeping the whole night through. You shouldn't wake up and look at the clock or wake up and go pee-pee or anything like that. You should sleep the whole night through. If not, that's a symptom that the liver is having a hard time detoxifying and is weak. Any kind of female problems, from hot flashes to periods to sore boobs or whatever. If the trapezius muscle, this muscle that goes down the neck, then down alongside the back, but especially here. If it ever gets tight, that's a symptom that the liver is having a really tough time. Okay, any questions about that?
Mary, I have a question.
Okay.
I know someone, a young lady, she's about 19 years old, and she has a lot of problems that time of the month. And we were trying to figure out what's going on with her. We haven't really done an intake, as you know, just to see what her health condition is. But she was telling me that that is something that she'd like to get help with. She has a lot of constipation. She has a lot of women issues that time of the month, and she needs a lot of help. So you're saying that's a liver issue?
I believe 95% of the time it's liver. Yep, that's where I would start. And
Okay.
this is Jackie, right? Now I recognize your voice.
Yes.
Okay, and I remember now that you're in New Jersey because I said we're neighbors. So I
Yeah.
apologize. It's been a crazy day today. That's why I'm not speaking very articulately. Articulately? I'm not speaking very well because it's been a long, long day. But if you email me, and you have my email address because you've emailed me before, if you email me, I will send you a list of all the liver symptoms, and you can ask her. She has more than 2 of those symptoms, then I would work with the liver.
Thank you, Mary. I'll do that.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, and I've also posted the link to the liver health set where you have all that list.
Oh, okay. So, Jackie, this is what you do. You go in here, and Joanne posted it. You just click on that list right there. Oh, that's the wrong list.
No, it's there. Go down.
Oh.
Oh.
There it is. Nope, that's not it either.
No,
Why don't y'all?
that's definitely the. No. It's the first thing you clicked. Just go down on that page.
Oh, okay. Well, I go to miscellaneous, and then I go down to liver symptoms. So you just went a different way.
Okay.
These are lists of liver symptoms, and you don't have to have all of them. You just have to have 2 of them to know that you need to work on your liver. So if you click on that, is this the one that you have, Joanne?
Is it?
You know what?
It
I'll
might be
put it
the
in
other
there.
one.
I'll put it in there just in case. So if you click on the one that I just posted, and then you can memorize it, just click on the little thingy there, and then you can read it afterwards or print it out or whatever. Just so you know, for people here who are practitioners, I like to help people. I have my things on my website are copywritten. That's to protect me because I wrote something one time and somebody took it and got it copywritten and then told me that I wasn't allowed to use it or she would sue me for copyright infringement. So I copyright everything to protect me, but protect that I can use what I wrote. But you are welcome, and I'm saying this on this webinar, and I've said it before, you're welcome to print out or use whatever you want to from my website. It's to help people. So don't let the copyright get in your way. Okay, did you say there's another question, Joanne?
Yes, someone's asking about CBD oil.
A good CBD oil is fine. Yep. That's what Hemp Zero is. It's like a hemp oil. Hemp and CBD oil come from the same plant. So yes, you can use that too. But make sure it's a good brand. Everybody and their grandmother now has a CBD oil out there, and some of them the stuff they use to extract the oils aren't all that great. So you want something that's really good. Okay, so we're just going to say Chinese stress relief. If finances are really, really, really tough, if you email me, or Joanne, we can tell you if you're a candidate that could get away with REX, but Chinese stress relief is the best. Okay, and this is how you take it. You're supposed to remember your dreams every night for about 20 minutes when you wake up in the morning. If you don't, that means that your nerve itself, not the myelin, but the nerve itself, does not have enough nutrients to get you in that level of sleep. So, I would suggest that you start with what's on the bottle. Let's say 6 a day is on the bottle. Depends what kind you get. If that week that you took 6 for a week, you didn't dream 7 days out of 7 with no nightmares. A nightmare is whenever you're afraid, angry, sad, hurt, frustrated, anything like that. Just dreams, like stupid dreams. Like Justin Bieber came and did my dishes. Some kind of stupid dream. The next week, I would do 7 a day. If I still didn't dream 7 days out of 7, the week after that, I would take 8 a day, and so on, until however many you need to dream with no nightmare. So if you dreamt one night and had a nightmare, you just still don't count that night. I would still increase it. Okay, you all with me on there? Any questions?
Not about that.
Okay, well, go ahead. Ask me what they did have a question about.
Oh, it's something unrelated, so I'll ask at the end so
Oh,
you
okay.
don't lose your train of thought.
All right, because my train's been derailed several times tonight. Okay, and the liver cleanse formula, and there's a lot of liver herbs out there, and there's milk thistle. Everyone wants to take milk thistle, and it doesn't work as well. My absolute favorite of all time liver combination is called liver cleanse formula. It's not really a cleanse, it nourishes the liver. If you sleep about half the time, the whole night through, I would start with 3 a day. If you only sleep 1 or 2 times a week, I would start with 5 a day. If you go, man, I don't know the last time I slept the whole night through, then I would start with 10 a day. Then I would increase it by 1 capsule a day per week until you slept the whole night through. Fair warning, my liver was really trashed whenever I started this. I was up to 45 a day before I could sleep the whole night through. Most people don't have to go that high. Probably the average is like 25, and it's not very long. Then, when you get to the point that you're sleeping the whole night through, then you increase it by 1 for a week. And if you still sleep the whole night through, then you increase it again until you get down to 0. And that's how many I need now. Last night I woke up for some reason at 2, which is unusual. It's been months and months and months before I woke up. But I don't wake up at all anymore. And before, I was up all the time. But I nourish my liver, and I don't do that anymore. Okay, any questions?
What liver herb do you recommend?
It's called Liver Cleanse Formula, and it's made by Nature Sunshine. That's the only one I suggest.
And what is Chinese stress relief? The
It's an herbal
nervine.
combination, huh?
Yeah, she just the Chinese nervine herb. Just can you explain that?
Okay, it's called Chinese Stress Relief. And it's made from herbs from China, or Chinese herbs, but they check for lead and radiation and all kind of stuff. It's a very good herb. And it's called Chinese Stress Relief. Okay, any other questions?
And that's it.
Joanne can help you with this stuff. as well. Okay, here's other nutrients. We're going to skip this right now because it's getting kind of late. If you want to know more about it, contact Joanne or myself. You got to watch it because sometimes it can cause anxiety, especially if the MTHFR gene. You have to watch. But there are other things you can take. Anxiousness didn't work for me, but it works for some people. It helps with anxiety. But it's a quick fix, like a Band-Aid. It's not. What we want is for your body to start doing what it should be doing so that you can feel the way you should feel, not just alter it or suppress it or stimulate it with herbs like you would medicine. We wanted you to heal. Okay, someone asked questions about this. How long does it take? You are not on the full protocol until you are dreaming every night and sleeping the whole night through. So you'll take your herbs until you're dreaming every night and sleeping the whole night through. And when you are, that's the first day of you're on full protocol. For the next 0 to 3 months, it's like you're not taking anything. Most of the time. I know there's some people that have websites that say they do this protocol and they notice something before that, but that is really rare. Most of the time you don't notice anything at all for 0 to 3 months. 3 to 6 months, people usually say, I don't notice anything, but my mother says I'm more chilled. And the boss says, what have you been doing? I notice things are better, but I don't notice it because it's very, very subtle. By 6 months after you are dreaming every night and sleeping the whole night through, you should know. And that's a lot of faith. Most people make it around a month to 6 weeks and they quit. And I'll say, I told you, you just wasted those herbs. Because the nervous system heals very, very, very slowly. I had a friend who was mowing the grass and his foot is on a hill, and his foot slid underneath the lawnmower and it cut off a couple of his toes. They sewed his toes on. Somebody put it in ice and they took it to the hospital. They sewed his toes on. The skin healed in a couple weeks. The bone healed in a couple months. But it was over a year before that nerve totally regenerated again. Because nerves heal very slowly. So if you want to feel like brand new in 6 months or to a year, it's probably not going to happen for you, not with this. Probably not with anything. But if you want to heal your body so you could feel good like I did for 29 years and not needed taking anything for this, then I would give this a try. You'll know within 6 months after sleeping the whole night through and dreaming if it's going to work for you. I would say the average person is between 18 months and 3 years. 18 months if you just have a little bit of OCD but nobody around you knows it. 3 years if everyone knows it. Because you can't hide it anymore. And when you heal, it's so funny when people call me, they'll say, oh yeah, I really feel it's doing really good. Then they'll call me, oh no, it's not working, it's not going to work for me. No, what's happening is your body's healing, and it's called a healing crisis. So you'll do 2 steps forward and a step back. The body will cleanse, then it will heal again, and then it will cleanse, and it will heal again, and it will cleanse. And that's how it is until you become completely symptom-free. I suggest you stay on it for additional 3 months so that as soon as you stop, the nutrients don't drop. And you have to teach your body to hold on to these nutrients. And then after that, as I said, if you're like me, 29 years, I've never needed to take anything else. Okay, to sum it all up, fatty acids, unnerving some kind, stay away from stress, no coffee, no tea, no caffeine. Don't eat junk food. You know, if you eat like ho-hos and chips, you're not going to get better. Eat vegetables and a good diet. Stay away from peanuts and peanut products because peanuts stop enzyme production and you won't digest the foods and the herbs as well as you should. And if you know you have a food allergy, I had a lady who was allergic to some, I think it was fish, seafood or something like that. And she said, oh, but I just love it. But that was slowing her down. Anything that puts stress on the body, you don't want to happen. Turkey, actually, the body takes L-tryptophan from turkey and converts it into serotonin. Good idea if you don't have gout to add some turkey once in a while. Salmon and cod, I don't suggest anymore. They're good for you, but to get good salmon or cod is pretty hard nowadays because of what they've done to our fish or to our waters, the fish. Eat a lot of raw vegetables, a lot of raw fruits. Bananas also actually contain serotonin. So if you know you're going to have a really bad day, maybe a banana will help to take the edge off a little bit. Parsley soothes the adrenals. Fermented foods helps the body produce B vitamins. Bone broth heals the intestines so you can absorb nutrients better. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. You have been very, very patient. And you all stuck around. I don't know if you're snoring and sleeping, but you all stuck around. Very good. Any questions at all?
Someone wants to know where they can get the herbs.
This lady right here, because I am semi-retired and I'm doing a whole new project. I don't want to sell herbs anymore. Matter of fact, I'm even going to take it off my website that I sell herbs. So Joanne, this is her phone number. This is her Facebook group. And you ready for it? Everybody ready? Balancing Health and Wellness at gmail.com is her email. You know,
Gotta earn
BHW,
it.
huh?
You gotta earn it.
You sure do. Okay, and she is sweet enough to do it. And Joanne, I don't pay Joanne for doing this. Not one stinking penny because I'm cheap. No, because I don't have the money to. I do my money, I waste it on my grandkids. But if you ever need a liver, though, Joanne, as much as you've helped me, you just let me know. I'll give you a hunk of mine. It's in pretty good shape. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Good to know.
But she helps us out, and she doesn't have to. She doesn't get anything for doing this, and all the extra things that she does and stuff. I couldn't do. I wouldn't do it without her. So, any other questions?
No, that's it. Just people saying thank you.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all for coming. And oh, Joanne, what's next time?
Next week is Herbology 1.
Oh, yin and yang, and yin and yang herbs. These guys would love that. I love that class. I absolutely love that class. It's so cool. All right. Well, I hope you get another one of our classes. And if you need us, you can email me if you have a question, or email Joanne. She knows like everything I know, but how much I weigh. She knows everything else. But you can, if you can't get a hold of you, and if you don't have the strength to type all this out, you can email me and I'll help you too. But to order or whatever, you can call her. Right, Joanne?
Yes.
All right. Any questions, guys? Alrighty.
Copy and paste my email. Is that it? Someone's saying copy and paste. I don't know.
Well, type in your
Oh, copy and okay.
You want to type it in so they can copy it?
I did. It's there.
Don't lose that. I mean, she's used like almost every letter in the alphabet in that beast. Mine's Mary's Herbs, just like short and concise.
All the cute stuff was taken. That's the problem.
I'm just kidding. All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and this can be done. Don't be, if you have OCD, have a lot of solace in the fact that you can overcome this. I believe that with all my heart. All right. Well, you all take care. Good night, everybody. And thank you again, Joanne.
My pleasure. Good night. Thank you.